Welcome to Spirit Echo, where forgotten whispers rise again from the cracks between life and death. Tonight, we travel to the ancient canals of Phra Khanong, a quiet district in Bangkok, Thailand, where locals still avoid walking alone at night. Not because of thieves, but because of a ghost. A woman who died with grief in her heart and love still clinging to her soul. Her name is Mae Nak. In the mid-1800s, under the reign of King Rama IV, Thailand, then known as Siam, stood at the edge of change. Steamships had just begun arriving from Europe. Streets buzzed with whispers of modernization. But along the canals of Phra Khanong, life moved slowly, untouched by time. Nestled near the river, in a modest wooden house on stilts, lived a young woman named Nak and her husband Mak. Their love was the kind of love people envied, pure, sincere, and full of quiet laughter. She was known in the village for her grace, skin like polished ivory, lips soft as lotus petals, and hair that flowed down her back like dark silk. Mak, a humble and kind-hearted man, worked as a farmer and boatman, always returning home before dusk to share simple meals with Nak. Their neighbours often saw them walking by the canal in the golden hour of sunset, barefoot, hand in hand, the world around them fading into stillness. Children would tease them for acting like newlyweds every day. But Mak would simply smile, and Nak would blush. Soon, news spread that Nak was with child. Joy filled their home like the scent of burning jasmine incense. She began to hum lullabies in the evenings, softly stroking her belly as Mak repaired fishing nets nearby. They decorated the baby's room with love, colourful garlands hung from bamboo beams, and tiny charms were tied above the doorway to ward off bad spirits. Every evening, they lit incense and whispered prayers to the ancestors, asking for protection over the unborn child. But as the rains came early that year, so did the clouds of war. One humid morning, soldiers arrived at the village by boat, bearing the king's royal order. All able-bodied men were to be conscripted for a military campaign in the west. Mak was called. "I'll come back," he said, kneeling before Nak as tears welled in her eyes. He placed a trembling hand on her belly, feeling the faintest of kicks. "Before the baby is born, I'll be home, I promise." Nak nodded, but her hands gripped his tighter than ever before. In her heart, a shadow had already begun to form, a quiet voice whispering that this promise might be broken. As Mak left with the other young men, barefoot and silent on the dirt path, Nak stood in the doorway of their home, one hand over her swollen belly, the other clenching a string of prayer beads, watching until the boat disappeared down the foggy canal, and then she was alone. Days turned to weeks. The rainy season deepened. Alone in their wooden home by the water, Nak moved slowly now, her belly full, her body tired. The sound of the rain tapping on the thatched roof became her lullaby, the wind her only companion. Neighbours brought her food, offered prayers, and sometimes stayed to help her clean or sweep the walkway by the canal. But as her labour approached, they grew quiet, even distant. Old women in the village began to whisper among themselves, "She's too pale. The baby kicks too strongly. It's a bad omen." But Nak smiled through the discomfort. She kept lighting incense every evening, praying for Mak's safe return. She refused to believe he wouldn't make it back in time. Then, one night, as thunder cracked through the sky like the voice of a god, the pain came. Her water broke as lightning lit up the canal. She screamed, long, sharp and desperate, echoing into the storm. No midwife could reach her. The wooden path was flooded, the boatmen afraid to sail in the rising waters. She clutched the edge of the wooden floorboards, nails digging into the planks. Sweat poured from her brow, mixing with tears. The candle beside her flickered wildly, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. She was alone. Hours passed. Screams became sobs. Sobs turned to silence. By dawn, Nak was gone. So was the baby. They found her lying on the floor, wrapped around the lifeless child, as if still trying to protect it, even in death. The villagers held a funeral in the traditional way. They dressed her in soft white cloth, burned sandalwood incense, and placed coins on her eyes for the journey beyond. Some say her expression was peaceful. Others say her lips were still whispering his name, Mac. The flames of the cremation danced like spirits around the pyre. Her ashes were scattered near the Phra Khanong canal, where her soul, if restless, might return home. And just as the wind settled, Mac returned. The war had ended sooner than expected. Mac, unharmed but weary, journeyed home by boat, his heart filled with anticipation. He clutched a small carved elephant in his bag, a gift for the baby he hadn't yet seen. His thoughts were filled with Nak, how she would smile, how she might cry when she saw him. He imagined her standing on the bank, waving, calling his name. As his boat turned down the familiar bend in the Phra Khanong canal, a strange stillness settled over the water. No children played by the edge. No merchants called from their boats. Even the wind felt held. But there, standing at the dock in her white dress, was Nak. She smiled gently. Mac, you're home. He dropped his bag and rushed into her arms. Her touch was cool, but he didn't notice. She held a small bundle in her arms, their child, asleep, wrapped in soft cloth. Mac wept. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm so sorry, he whispered into her hair. Nak only smiled, her voice soft as the mist. You're home now. That's all that matters. The next few days felt like a dream. Mac returned to daily life grateful, even overwhelmed by joy. Nak cooked his favourite meals, humming gently in the evenings. She would cradle the baby in the candlelight and sing lullabies in a low, distant tone. And yet, something was off. Mac's neighbours avoided him. When he waved at them from the boat landing, they turned away. Even the monks at the local temple crossed the street when they saw him pass. One evening, an old woman left a small bundle of white string and garlic on his doorstep. Protection charms. Mac didn't understand. He thought it was just village superstition. But the nights grew colder. Nak never slept. She simply sat, rocking the baby slowly, eyes open, unmoving. One day, Mac visited the market. A friend who hadn't yet fled the village pulled him aside. Mac, the man whispered, voice trembling. You must leave. Listen to me, Nak. Nak died weeks ago. We held her funeral. We saw her body. Mac stared at him, confused. What are you talking about? I spoke to her this morning. She's alive. She's at home with our child. The man paled. Mac, you're living with a ghost. Mac dropped his groceries and ran. Back at the house, everything looked the same. Nak greeted him at the door with that same quiet smile. You're home early, she said softly. Mac stared at her. Her eyes, they were darker now, too dark. And her feet, they didn't quite touch the ground. He excused himself and walked into the kitchen. One of the old floorboards creaked beneath him. He dropped a spoon through the slats. As he knelt to pick it up, he froze. From the gap between the boards, he saw Nak's arm, thin, pale, stretching unnaturally long, reaching through the floorboards to retrieve the spoon from beneath the house. Her bones bent in ways no living persons ever could. Mac stumbled back in horror. From the other room, Nak called out gently, Is something wrong, Mac? Mac fled the house that night, barefoot, heart pounding, racing into the darkness as the fog closed in around him. His breath came in gasps. His mind refused to believe what his eyes had seen. But the truth whispered louder with every step. Nak was dead, and he had been living with her ghost. The villagers were already waiting at the temple. They had seen this before, not in their lifetimes, but in stories passed from their grandmother's lips. A ghost bound by love is the hardest to banish. Mac collapsed at the temple gates, sobbing, begging the monks for help. That night, the village fell into silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy, suffocating stillness that comes before a storm. Back at the house, Nak waited. She stood in the doorway, holding the baby. Her eyes no longer loving. They were hollow, glassy, and endless. She knew he had run. She knew the truth had found him. And with that truth came betrayal. The candles in the home blew out, one by one. The air turned cold. That night, the villagers heard things they would never speak of again. The wind carried the sound of a woman's weeping, followed by screaming. Some say they saw her floating across the canal, her hair dragging behind her like seaweed, her feet inches above the water. Others say the trees bent in her path, as if even the forest dared not block her way. One brave monk left a charm at the edge of her home, a sacred thread blessed with prayers. By morning, it had been burned black. Then, people began to die. The man who warned Mac was found hanging from a tree by his own fishing net. His eyes were wide open, his mouth filled with dirt. Another villager, who had whispered too loudly about the haunting, was found drowned in a shallow puddle, face down, arms stiff as bamboo. The whisper spread. Don't speak her name. Don't look toward the canal at night. Leave offerings, or suffer her wrath. Back at the temple, Mac refused to eat. He spent days in silence, praying, weeping, trembling. A senior monk placed his hand gently on Mac's shoulder and spoke. She is not evil, child. She is grief. She is love that refuses to die. Mac fell to his knees. Then what do I do? How do I let her go? The monk looked toward the river, eyes distant. We don't fight a spirit like this. We help her remember how to rest. Word of the haunting spread beyond the village. At dawn, monks from distant temples arrived, robes rustling like whispers in the wind. They brought with them relics, ancient scripture wrapped in gold thread, bells blessed by the royal court, and a clay pot inscribed with sacred yantra, mystical symbols of containment and peace. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Lure Mae Nak to the riverbank, calm her spirit, and seal her soul within the clay vessel. But ghosts born of love do not go quietly. That evening, Mark stood at the edge of the canal. The monks had drawn sacred lines in chalk upon the soil, each one sealed with prayer. Incense smoke curled into the sky like fragile fingers. The chanting began. Slow, rhythmic, ancient. Mark held out his hands, voice trembling. Nak, come to me. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you find peace. The water stilled. The air thickened. She came. From the mist above the canal, she emerged. Barefoot, clothed in her white funeral dress. Her long black hair hung like a curtain across her face. In her arms, the baby, silent, unmoving. Mac stepped forward, tears streaming. I love you. But this is not living. You are not meant to stay. Nak's face remained unreadable. The baby began to cry. Behind Mac, the monks intensified their chant, ringing small bronze bells in unison. The river shimmered. The clay pot began to glow. Nak's expression twisted, not in rage, but in sorrow. You said you would come back. Mac dropped to his knees, and I did. I came back. But you were already gone. Nak screamed, not with anger, but with the raw pain of a woman forced to relive her death. The sky darkened. Wind surged from the water, blowing the incense out. Trees bent. The monks closed the ritual. The head monk stepped forward, raising the glowing pot high. He spoke a final chant, binding the spirit's essence. A sudden gust of wind knocked Mac backward. And then silence. The moon broke through the clouds. Nak was gone. Only the baby's cloth remained, folded gently on the ground. They placed the sealed pot deep beneath the temple's floor. Others say it was cast into the river that night, sinking slowly into the depths of Phra Khanong. Whatever the truth, Mae Nak's spirit no longer haunted the house, but her love and her sorrow remained. The canal grew quiet after that night. No more whispers, no more screams carried on the wind. Just the sound of water lapping softly against the banks and the distant ring of temple bells. But the villagers never forgot her. They never dared to. Years passed. Homes changed. Roads were built where wooden paths once stood. Children grew up hearing the story from their grandmothers. Don't play by the canal at night. Mae Nak still watches. And yet, the fear faded into reverence. A shrine was built at Wat Mahabut, where the monks say her spirit still lingers, not to harm, but to listen. To mothers praying for safe childbirth. To lovers begging for devotion. To the lonely, whispering their grief into the incense smoke. Her image, once feared, now stands surrounded by lotus flowers, silk dresses, baby toys, and gold leaf offerings. A ghost no longer cursed, but worshipped. They call her Mae Nak now with affection, Mae meaning mother, because even in death she clung to that title, to love, to memory. Even today, people from all across Thailand visit her shrine. Some light candles, some bring perfumes and ribbons, some just sit quietly and cry, because something about Mae Nak feels familiar. She is every woman who waited too long, every love that ended too soon, every goodbye that never had time to be spoken. And on some nights, when the canal fog is thick and the moon is full, the water still reflects the shape of a woman in white, watching, waiting, not for vengeance, but for the world to remember her, not as a ghost, but as a woman who loved too deeply to let go. Thank you for listening to Spirit Echo. If Mae Nak's story stirred your heart, like, share, subscribe, and light a candle for the ones who never got to say goodbye. Until next time, remember, some spirits don't haunt for hate. They haunt because they remember love.